we were just recording, low network. It could be a bad connection. We were recording, nobody heard anything. So I restarted my phone. I was just on a conference call. Maybe the sound from that had changed some setting on mine. So now I'm waiting for you to let me know if you can hear me. And if you can't, then the only other option is I would go inside and get a better connection. So just let me know if you can hear me. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Can you hear me? Is everything back to normal? Yes. Okay. All right. So then I have to explain what I was explaining before. That when someone becomes a devotee, I see in myself, and you've seen this in yourself, and we see this in others, we have certain aspirations. And we're very enthusiastic, and we want to achieve a very high level of Krishna consciousness, and we think it's going to happen very quickly. And so what happens for a lot of devotees, they're shooting for the moon, and they can't reach the moon, and they kind of give in. They just say, well, what's the use? I can't reach the moon. And they just kind of fall away in their spiritual life. They stay in Krishna consciousness, but they're not doing so well. Or they give up Krishna consciousness. It's like, well, if I can't become self-realized, within 6 months, then why try? So they're doing something which is unnatural for them. They're trying to act on a level for which they don't have realization, they don't have qualification. So the desire to act on that level is good, but it has to be balanced with the reality. Just like I may want to run 5 miles, but I can hardly run 100 yards. So the desire to run 5 miles is okay, but if I try to run it, I could kill myself or have a heart attack or collapse, unconscious, right? And then if that happens, then I'll probably think, well, I'm never going to run again. So I've seen that with devotees. They're trying to achieve something. They can't achieve it, and so they just kind of give up Krishna consciousness or give up trying to achieve any decent state of Krishna consciousness. And then another thing that happens is when they realize their material situation, they make it deny it or suppress that this is actually a need that they have. Like sometimes someone will say, I'll never do this or I'll never do that. And sometimes when you say, I'll never do this, I'll never do that, you don't realize that actually you're attached to doing it. And that's why you're saying, I'll never do it. But you're really saying is, I don't want to do it because it's not good for me. But to say that I'll never do it is not always true. And if it's something that you have a need to do, but you feel it's not good for you, then you have to understand how to do it in a Krishna conscious way. So I've seen some devotees just strive for a very high level, not achieve it, become discouraged, become depressed, oh, I'm so bad, something's wrong with me, and they don't try enough in Krishna consciousness because they can't get here, so then they think, what's the use? And so their Krishna consciousness goes way down, and they don't really try to get much higher because they failed at achieving a goal they couldn't go, and then the psychology is, why try? Or, as I said, they just give it up. Then sometimes we don't look at our situation realistically, and we think, and we think we should do something because it's something we would like to do, but we're not qualified to do it. So I want to make that distinction. I'm attracted to do something, but I'm not qualified to do it, and I don't know that I'm not qualified to do it. So then I attempt to achieve something for which I'm not qualified, and the only way I realize I'm not qualified is eventually when I can't maintain it, that higher state, and then I realize that so it's kind of like I'm not in touch with where I'm actually at. You could say not in touch with my feelings, that could be, but it could be that I'm just not in touch with my own level of Krishna consciousness. I'm not aware of it realistically. I think I can achieve something greater, or I think I'm on a higher platform than I am, and then I strive for that. And so I've seen with some devotees, They're really, really like, I'll never do this. I don't want to do this. This is not, I'll always do this. And I acknowledge that the desire is good and they're sincere, and that's why they want to do this and not do that. But in many cases, many, many, many cases, it's not realistic. And so instead of being realistic about what's needed, they're trying to act beyond what's needed. And eventually they'll come back to what's needed, but maybe not in the best state of consciousness. Whereas if they would have understood their need and then fulfilled it and gradually evolved in their Krishna consciousness, that would have been better. So I want to give you some observations that I keep seeing. I see devotees, I meet them at Rath Yatra. These were ashram devotees, ashram leaders, temple presidents, Sankirtan devotees, very sincere, who, in my estimation, were a little like too serious, if you know what I mean. If you think, can you be too serious? Yeah, too serious means serious beyond, serious to the point of neglecting their own needs. And so I see them, and it's like, is that your twin sister? Is that your twin brother? Because it's not the same person I knew. That you don't look the same. Your personality is different. Your ambiance, your energy, everything's different. So what happened was that they were suppressing a lot of their needs and desires. So it's like this rubber band, in trying to be the kind of devotee that was not sustainable for them. It wasn't real for them. And so in trying to do that, it was like the rubber band. And then at some point, phew, it just shot. And then I see them, and they're so much different than what they were as devotees. It's as devotees, very austere, very simple, very plain. And then I see them like 5 years later, and really well dressed, really well made up, really well integrated in the material world, and not very Krishna conscious. It was like, if I can't be perfectly Krishna conscious, then I might as well just enjoy the material world. It was an out of balance situation. So my observation is that if they would have been more connected with their needs in the beginning, they could have, in a Krishna conscious way, fulfilled those needs, so they wouldn't have to have this pendulum of trying to be too austere and then swinging to the other side where they couldn't maintain it. So, the most obvious example is young men who attempted to take sannyas, who later got married, or who later just completely didn't even stay in Krishna consciousness, just gave it up entirely and lived an ordinary material life. And, it was unrealistic for them to be sannyasis. They weren't qualified. They weren't aware of their own nature and their own desire. They thought that they were above it. Now, the question may come, why would you think you're above a desire that's very strongly rooted in you? And a lot of times we observe that someone thinks they're free of the desire, but we can see that they have it. Everybody can see that they have it. The only person who can't see that they have it is them. And so Prabhupada explains this, that there's two kinds of renunciation. One kind of the renunciation that comes from the advancement in Krishna consciousness, realization, taste. And so that renunciation is natural and it's sustainable. It's just like we give the example, as you grow, you give up your toys, or you have new toys. So giving up your toys is a natural process when you hit a certain age. And so when you hit a certain level of advancement in Krishna consciousness, a certain level of renunciation comes along with it. It's natural. It's not forced. But there's another kind of renunciation that comes through frustration. And you're frustrated with material activities. Maybe you had relationships with the opposite sex, and they always ended up in very, very difficult situations that caused you a lot of anxiety, stress, distress, depression. And so you come to this point and you say, I never want a relationship with the opposite sex again. So you're very renounced from the opposite sex. So Prabhupada is saying that kind of renunciation is not real renunciation, that's renunciation of frustration. And if behind the frustration isn't genuine renunciation, then either renunciation because of your nature or because of your advancement in Krishna consciousness. Now, sometimes renunciation comes because of our nature. We're just, by nature, let's say some man or woman is not attracted to grihastha life, and it's not because of any bad experience, and it's not because they're so evolved in their spiritual life. It's something from the past. That is just how they've always been. You see that there's some people that live very simply. There's a whole movement called the Little House Movement. I don't know if you're aware of. And people build these small houses, like 300 square feet, really, really small, like the size of my office and my studio, and that's the whole house. And they have an office, a bathroom, a kitchen, living quarters, everything is there, and a loft. And some devotees, they need very big houses. They have very big houses. They like big houses. So some people, by nature, are renounced, and it has nothing to do with their level of Krishna consciousness. So that's there for sure. But some of us are not renounced. We're just frustrated. We couldn't enjoy something. So we say, oh, I don't want that, I'm renounced. But the reality is, if you could enjoy it, you'd want it. But because you haven't been able to enjoy it, you're frustrated with it. And so you say, I don't want anything to do with it. And that's common reason we become devotees. We're frustrated with our attempts to be happy. And so it's very easy for us to become a devotee and renounce. At least in my generation, we'd become devotees and we would renounce everything because we're frustrated with everything we did. But what we later realize is we're not frustrated specifically with, no, how should I say it? We're not frustrated with relationships. We're not frustrated with music. We're not frustrated with education. We're frustrated with the kind of relationships, kind of music, the kind of education. And we confuse that with the fact that I think, well, I'm frustrated with relationships, with education, with music, with art, with literature, with all these things. When in fact, you may be very, very attracted to art, or you may be an artist or a musician, or you're very interested in literature, or in relationships are important for you, and family is important for you. But the family you grew up in was dysfunctional. So you're like, I don't want a family of my own. There's so much misery in family. But actually, you really do want a family. You would just like a family that's functional. But you don't recognize that. You don't realize that. Because of frustration, you just renounce. Like, I'm renounced. But you aren't actually renounced. You're just frustrated because you couldn't enjoy it. And if you could enjoy it, you wouldn't have renounced it. So we have to understand the difference between having a nature to not be attracted to certain things and having actual renunciation due to Krishna consciousness and just being frustrated and renouncing out of frustration. So Vinod Vani says, despite our inability to maintain a high level of external Krishna consciousness, many of us remember those days as the best days of our life. Yes. There's the phrase, better to have tried and failed than to have never, I think it's have tried at all. Yeah. Have never even tried. I don't think this kind of institution has historically supported self-expression and fulfilling one's needs. I'm happy to see the younger generation less conflicted about leading a balanced life. Lots to say about this. Glad you discussed. Yeah. So, and also the point, I think the point that you're making also is, for many of us as brahmacharis, brahmacharinis, we actually did it. We did the renunciation, we did the austerity, but we did it too long. At least for many of us, we went beyond our ability to continue it. As young people coming out of the material world, frustrated with many things and wanting to be Krishna conscious, we said, yes, I'm renounced, and we did it, but we didn't realize that it's something we couldn't maintain. And so now, if you have good leaders, and you say, if you're a brahmachari and you say, I never want to get married, or if you're a woman, you say, I never want to get married, then the leaders will say, well, let's see your capabilities. And, years later, we'll look at it. And so 5 years later, the person says, I don't want to get married. And we may think, there's no way you're going to make it as brahmachari. And so before you crash, we should help you change your ashram and figure out how to get back in school and so forth and prepare for that. which may go against the desire of some devotees because they don't realize they have those needs. So I have this story. It's very funny, and I've told it before, but for those of you who haven't heard it, there was a man, I don't know if he's alive anymore. He was a little, I would say he looked like he was about 15 years older than most of the devotees, maybe even 20 years older than most of the devotees. And he used to come to the LA temple, usually for the evening artik. And he probably lived around the neighborhood, and he was attracted to Krishna consciousness. And I never spoke to him. I actually never saw him speak to any devotees. I just saw him. He would come with a little chair. I think he would bring his own chair, and he would sit in the back of the temple for artik, maybe stay for class. And I would see him quite often because I spent a lot of time in LA and in California, in and out of LA. And so many temples have lots of turnover. So if you haven't been to a temple for 5, 6, 7 years or 10 years, when you go back, you see very few of the faces that were there previously. So I'd go back to LA periodically. The new faces were there. I was in LA in 72. I was there in 75, 76. I was there again in 79. I was there. Then I finally went back in 95. And so I'd go back and see all the changing faces, but there's one face that didn't change. It was this guy. He was always there. And that struck me as he was not a brahmachari, he was not chanting rounds, he was not involved in seva, but he was always there. Whereas the people who were chanting their rounds, involved in seva, they're gone. I said, where's so-and-so? Oh, we don't know. And I can't say exactly how they're doing. But my point is, we've seen, I'm sure all of you have seen, many devotees who are doing really well, but it was beyond what they could maintain. And then we don't see them. Whereas people who are coming, who were allowed to come, or who understood that they were not ready to fully immerse themselves in Krishna consciousness, for many of them, later on, 10, 20 years later on, they're actually in a better situation than those who threw themselves into Krishna consciousness, though. Was it bad that we threw ourselves in? No, it was just bad we didn't maintain it. So what I'm seeing, at least the strategy that I'm trying to follow now in the preaching I'm doing, is to allow people to find their place in Krishna consciousness. Because if you have a very one-pointed system and say, well, this is what it means to be a devotee. If you're serious, then you live in the ashram, and then you kind of overlook your needs and you just go out on book distribution, which is fine if you can do that. I'm not saying that you shouldn't. But if that's the only option and that's what everyone strives for, then it creates problems because not everybody can do that. But if everyone understands, okay, there's various levels of participation and various levels of maturity, then people can find their place and be happy in Krishna consciousness. Because it's really sad when someone becomes discouraged because they don't find their place in Krishna consciousness, because they either internally or have been made to think that their place in Krishna consciousness is up here. And some people, by nature, they want to achieve high levels. And if they can't achieve it this level, they just give up. So I think a safer place for the future of ISKCON is to allow people to find themselves where they're at, and we help them. And according to Varna and Ashram and involvement in Krishna consciousness sadhana, what they can maintain so that they're comfortable. And to be honest about it, not necessarily be ashamed of it, but just accept, okay, this is real for me. It's like, how many chapatis do you need? Well, I actually need 10. Well, that's kind of embarrassing. I know, but if I don't eat 10, then I think about chapatis all day. So if I eat 10, then I'm fine. They say, well, doesn't that put you to sleep? And they say, yeah, it does. And I eat 10 and I take a nap. And that's just my program. And I made peace with it, and this is what I do. And so you can apply that idea to whatever it is you need. I need this certain amount of sleep. I need this kind of service. I need this kind of ashram. Whatever it is, I need it. Maybe I wish I didn't need it, but I realize I need it, and therefore I realize it's the best thing for me now to help me come to the next level. Or if I didn't deny that need, I'm going to crash. So I have to fulfill it honestly. And maybe I know it would be better if I didn't have the need. And that's also good because I can acknowledge that there's a level above this which I want to achieve. Maybe within the next 5 years, I can give up the 10 chapatis and get it down to 8, or maybe 5, or maybe when I'm 70, only 2 chapatis. And maybe my last year of life, no chapatis. So, but what's the point of eating 1 chapati and meditating on 9 chapatis all day? So something I've seen is it bothers me a lot, is when devotees feel very, very bad about who they are. Oh, I feel so bad because I have this need and that need. And I'm thinking, how have we trained devotees that they become depressed over the realization of what they need? And I'm so bad, I need this, or I need that. I need to do this kind of service, or it means that somehow the preaching has been to kind of funnel people into a certain, what they would see as a certain level of Krishna consciousness, that if you don't have it, then there's something wrong with you. You're lacking, or you should feel guilty. You should feel, it's like we're made to feel guilty about being who we are. And so then if I'm made to feel guilty about being who I am, I try to detach from those needs. And the more I try to detach from those needs, generally the stronger they become, or the more aware of them I become. And then the worse I feel, because by my wrong understanding, I'm just becoming more, my needs are becoming more obvious, but I'm going into more denial about my needs because I think it's a sign of Maya. Well, it's not a sign of Maya, it's just a sign of who you are. Maya means separating from Krishna. So whatever needs you have, whatever desires you have for service, for ashram, for austerity or lack of austerity, for sadhana, if it's within a Krishna conscious context, then it's not Maya. It is what it is. It's just who you are, and it's who you are best trying to apply Krishna consciousness. Sometimes I have this experience that sometimes if I'm not doing a lot of kirtan, like when I'm in Alachua, I'm usually working on other projects, and I'll just go to Mangal Arati and then I'll chant a few rounds, like half my rounds, and I'll come home. Because I need the morning time and up to like 9 or 10 to work on things that require heavy brain work. And then I take care of things that I can only take care of when I'm here, and which involves lots of writing and lots of videos recording, which is hard to do when I travel. And so and when I travel, I'm very involved in doing kirtan, like all the time. Even if you just give a class, you'll do a kirtan. And as the class leader, you can extend the kirtan. And naturally, when I travel, there's always other opportunities to do kirtan. So I get to do a lot of kirtan. And before I was a devotee, as I remember, I played guitar 7 days a week, 365 days a year, minimum 2 to 3 hours every day. But I never missed it. And I would write songs. And this started when I was 13. The first instrument I started playing when I was 9 was the clarinet. So that means that music was very much in me. It was like, it's in my blood, right? And so what I realize is when I go and I travel, I'm doing all this kirtan, it just immediately dawns on me how necessary it is for me. It's like that music, it's so much a part of me, it's so much in me. If it doesn't come out in Krishna consciousness, it's gonna take some other form, and that other form will be what? I'll just want to listen to music, any kind of music, right? Because it's like there. It's just, I have an understanding of music. I have a taste for music. I have a taste, an ability to create music, to write songs. It's deep. It's like when I hear songs, I understand them. I know how they're composed. it's so much part of me that if I don't do it, I can see that it's problematic for me. And someone could say, "Oh, that's just Maya." I've got a whole recording studio and synthesizers and guitars, and say that's just Maya. But Maya means separating from Krishna. So if it, I would say, at least in my case, it's more Maya to detach from it, so-called, because by detaching, the need's not being fulfilled. And then the need's going to come up, and if I can't employ that in Krishna's service, how will I fulfill that need? I'll have to fulfill it outside of Krishna's service. So then that becomes Maya, because Maya means it's distinct from Krishna. It's separate. Whereas, okay, here's this ability, and what's the big crime? What am I doing? I'm doing kirtan. And so we put together a little group. We have a bass player, we have a harmonium, a mridanga, kartals, maybe a guitarist, and we perform. And people appreciate it, and they're all chanting. And it's like, wow, fantastic. And so when I do that, it's like, yes, if I wasn't a devotee, this is what I'd be doing. I'd be on stage somewhere performing. I know that. I know I couldn't live without doing that. And so when I don't do it for a while, and then I go travel and I start doing it again, it always dawns on me that this is really important. It's really necessary. And it's not like if I don't do it, I'll go crazy and attack somebody or, listen to Led Zeppelin for 10 hours a day just to get my fix. That doesn't happen with me. It's not so much, but I think it has other subtle ramifications, maybe in my levels of inspiration or satisfaction or enthusiasm. I think it has some effect. And as I also said, yeah, there will naturally be this like appetite for music that could come out in strange ways and wanting to listen to all kinds of music, which sometimes does happen just because I appreciate good music. And sometimes when, like Jayadvaita Swami, he appreciates literature. And one time he said, if you want to read some really good literature, read this book. It's so well written. It's not a spiritual book, but it's just because he appreciates literature, it's his nature. So, if you appreciate art or music, sometimes you just appreciate it for what it is, not for the substance, but just for the form it takes. Well, this is a really good artist, painted something abstract or something that has nothing to do with Krishna, but I appreciate the skill. So that's true. If you're an artist, you'll appreciate art, even though it's not Krishna conscious. You'll appreciate the form of it, of course, not the substance. So I can appreciate the form of music, not the substance, because it's my nature. And so then I told this story many times, but I'll tell it here. You may not have all heard it, about one devotee who was very ill, and she went to an Ayurvedic doctor, and she'd been a musician probably most of her, as long as she could sing, probably from when she was a little kid. But she got into a managerial role, and she couldn't do any music. And musicians are usually not managers. Artists it's a different mindset. And so she was in this very awkward position having to manage. It's not an artistic form of expression, generally. I mean, it can be, but if you're more of a musician or artist, you probably wouldn't see it that way. And so she became ill, and she went to an Ayurvedic doctor, and he said, you're ill because you're not expressing your music. So it's like it's created this stress inside of you, and it's making you sick because you need to express it. So that's really interesting. If you have something you need to express, and you don't express it, it can actually make you sick, not only mentally, but physically. So I have a disciple who was trying to be like very, very Vedic. And I'd always tell her, there's no way you should try to be Vedic. You're not. It's not your nature. But she would try. So no, I want to be. I try. And they would say, no, just be natural. You've got your conditioning from your country, and your conditioning is pretty much diametrically opposed to the Vedic. So just use your conditioning and Krishna consciousness. Be who you are. Be okay with that. But, have good sadhana and follow the program. And she was like, no, I can't do that. My goal is to be Vedic. And so what was the result? She gave up Krishna consciousness because she couldn't do it. It was unnatural for her. So, and she was at least from my estimation, in her attempt to be Krishna conscious, she was suppressing a lot of things which she should have naturally felt. And they were becoming, for her, distasteful, but it was artificial. I don't think it was distasteful. I just think she was trying to convince herself that it was distasteful, but it ended up she ended up going back into all those things that she was trying to give up. So that's a sad story. Another sad story was with this same devotee, and she had developed this desire. Maybe when she was like 25, she said, "No, I don't want to get married." So we've heard that before. Many people just analyze the whole situation. They're new in Krishna consciousness. It doesn't make sense. Why would I get married? Lose my freedom and so forth. And so what often happens to people in this situation who don't want to get married, you've probably seen this, one day they wake up and they realize they're attached to somebody. They never even talked to the person. They've just seen the person around and they're attached. How do you get attached to someone? Like, I want to marry this person and I've never spoken to them. So what's going on with that? Obviously, they've been eating 2 chapatis thinking they could do it, and they should be eating 10, and now it's a year later, so do the math, and they're like, 1,728 chapatis in the rear. They're 8 chapatis a day. No, they're 250, they're like 250 times 12. So, they're at 3,000 chapatis in the rear. So they're really hankering for chapatis because they should have eaten 10 a day. So they come up to me and say, "I feel really bad." I go, "What's wrong?" He said, "I feel like eating 3,000 chapatis." And I say, "Why do you feel bad? You should have eaten 10 a day. And, this is just normal now that you want 3,000 because you should have had 3,000. I said, "Don't feel bad. This is just normal." But so many devotees feel bad when they realize that the thing they said they would never do or renounce, they have a need for it. And I feel so bad that they feel bad because there's no reason to feel bad because what they're feeling would be like saying, "I feel like eating breakfast. There's something wrong with me. I'm such a rascal." So what do you mean? You haven't eaten in 12 hours. That's just normal to be hungry. Really? It's okay to be hungry at 9 in the morning? Yeah, it's okay. It's something like that. You're 26. It's okay you mean it's okay to want to get married? Yeah, you're 26. So in some way, devotees, either through our training, bad training, or through their bad understanding, will feel like this. And then they'll get very depressed expressing their desire. And I look at them and I think, what kind of movement have we created that someone who has a natural desire, which everyone in the world has, both devotees and non-devotees, is lamenting that they have it? So that situation, we shouldn't allow that to happen to ourselves, or we shouldn't allow that to happen to anybody. So the point is, then I'll get to your comments. The point is that we have to understand where we're at and be real about it, and then deal with it. It's just like it's like you're hungry, so you have to deal with it. So what do you eat? Well, what you eat, you could eat candy. You could decide I'm never going to eat again, or you could decide I'm going to be a glutton for the rest of my life, or you could decide, okay, I'm hungry. What are my choices for eating? That will help me become healthy, and physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. What's the best thing I could do? So think of your needs, your desires like that, and how can I best fulfill them? Now, I've heard even a very advanced devotee say something which I don't know the context. I was just told he said that emotional needs are Maya, something like that. That being emotional is Maya. But I think that's a symptom of this whole problem of kind of thinking emotions are Maya or needs are Maya and denying them. But it always comes out the back door and backfires. So that's my whole point. That it's like maybe I would like to be more renounced than I am, but I'm not, and so I have to face that. I can't deny that. I have to look at that in the face and say this is the reality. Like in my own case, I would have loved to be a sannyasi. I think sannyas life is fantastic, but I didn't have the adhikari, the samskar. Somehow or other, I didn't have that level. I had renunciation, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't complete enough, I would say. And then I realized I had too much renunciation for grihastha life, but I didn't have enough renunciation for household life. So then I had to make a decision. Can I achieve the sannyas life, or do I have to adapt to the household life? So in my case, I decided to adapt to the household life. And that also had difficulties because when I first adapted, I saw that there was more renunciation than was healthy in the Grihastha ashram. So in order to cater to that need in a Krishna conscious way, I had to readapt. So I had to, like, in a sense, give up a little bit of renunciation, at least externally. So that's just the reality, what I had to do to deal with this fact that I wasn't yet ready for sannyas. So that's an interesting experience that I had. Like I could be more renounced in Grihastha life, but the Grihastha ashram is a certain way to be fulfilled that I had to adapt to. And so it's like I had to come down a little bit. But there's one other thing I want to say, and I was discussing this I've discussed this with many devotees, and maybe you have some comments about this, that sometimes something really interesting happens when you remove yourself from something. You're like just completely detached from it. Like we saw this in the early days of the movement. If you look at videos from the early days of the movement, we didn't have like the male-female separation thing. It wasn't being taught. If it was being taught, we didn't get it. And as far as I remember, after Prabhupada made several sannyasis, then the sannyasis they wanted a more separated environment with women in the back, men in the front, or women on the side. They wanted it separated and very little interaction. Whereas the interactions were greater, the interactions were less before that. But some men, I don't know about women because I haven't talked to them about it, but some men said that by creating too much separation, it actually created more attraction. I don't know if you have this experience. It's like, there's so many days I don't eat grains. There's so many days I don't eat breakfast till noon. I'm just doing something, and it's like I have to get it done. And I don't want to eat breakfast because I know once I eat breakfast, it's going to dissipate the energy. And this thing that has to be done, I've been putting it off. And so it's not uncommon for me to show up for breakfast at noon, right? But then if you say today's a fast day and you can't eat till noon, then I'm thinking about food. How am I going to do this? I don't know if you have that experience. And there's so many days I don't eat grains. It's just like I eat quinoa and this and that, and there's nothing in the house but lettuce and tomatoes, and I make a salad. But like, today's Ekadasi, no grains. Oh, okay, it's going to be hard. It's like, you know what I'm saying? It's like sometimes renunciation of things can happen more naturally, but when you say you can't have it and it's over there and don't look at it, all of a sudden it becomes more attractive. So I think that problem also exists within ISKCON when we sometimes say, you can't have this, don't touch this, don't look at this, don't see this. The renunciation becomes extreme, and then it creates an attraction. And so in realizing how to overcome desires, sometimes we realize that we have to be in connection with that thing to become detached from it. Whereas sometimes if we become detached from it prematurely, it becomes more attractive, which is just an interesting form of psychology. You know, when you're not supposed to eat something, take it out of the house. Sometimes you feel more comfortable. Well, it's in the house, but I won't eat it. But at least it's there. I know it's there. But I'm not going to eat it. But once it's taken out of the house, oh, now I'm nervous. But you're not going to eat it anyway. Yeah, I know, but it's out of the house. And I'm thinking about it. But what if I need to eat it? But you're not going to eat it. I know I'm not going to eat it, but what if? It's just a strange psychology. So it's something to be aware of, that sometimes in trying to put something out of your mind, if you have an attraction for it and you need to engage with it, that attraction will become stronger by detaching from it. And so part of the process of purification is engaging it. And so by engaging it, you realize, well, it's not so great, or you work it through your system. Yeah, like work it through your system is the word. Now, I'm blabbing here away, but it's this amazing story. So there's a devotee, he's a sannyasi. I've been a sannyasi for 6 years, I think. one of the earlier sannyasis, and he was in charge of a zone. And the zone under his care was taking off, and he was doing amazing service. And then, at some point, something happened, and something was building up inside of him. And he left his service with another woman, gave up his sannyas, got married, and he finally went to see Prabhupada when his wife was pregnant. I think he went to see Prabhupada in his last days. And he was anxious about seeing Prabhupada, and he just thought Prabhupada was going to chastise him. And so when he went in the room, he said, I couldn't even look at Prabhupada. I just, Prabhupada said he wanted to see me, but I thought, I just couldn't imagine what he was going to say, because what I did was so bad. It was just so bad. And the first thing that he came, his wife was, I think he'd just given a baby, and he had come without his wife, because it was the last days, and he was waiting for his wife to give birth, and when she gave birth, he came, which is circumstantial, because Prabhupada wasn't going to be able to see Prabhupada again. This was in Vrindavan in the last days. So when he came, he's expecting Prabhupada's going to disown him and chastise him and so forth. And the first thing Prabhupada said is, did you bring your wife? It was like nothing had happened. It was like everything was normal. No, I couldn't bring her. She's pregnant. Oh, how's the child? How is she? It was like totally accepted. So Prabhupada, here he is, this 80-year-old man, and here's this sannyasi, maybe he's like 27 or 28 maximum, who needed to get married. And Prabhupada's attitude towards him is like, yeah, of course. This is kind of like, yeah, I didn't expect all my sannyasis were going to make it. Although Prabhupada didn't tell them that. But internally, Prabhupada knew they're not all going to make it. But give them a try. Let's give it a shot. We need leaders. So Prabhupada was very realistic about that. And then Prabhupada wrote a purport about this devotee. He said, yeah, if you can't maintain sannyas, you can get married. It's just whatever you need. And so Prabhupada said, from whatever position you need to fight Maya, fight from that position where you'll be strong. So if you're not strong as a sannyasi, okay, then be strong as a grihastha. You're not strong in this service or this varna, then strong in another service. So Prabhupada was realistic about it, but we are, guilt-ridden and shame-ridden because we think, well, I should be on this level. And so what happens is that point I'm making, that you detach from something, you put it out of your mind, but you still have an attachment for it. And then by detaching, so-called, the attachment becomes stronger, the need becomes stronger. And sometimes you embrace it in such a way that's not healthy for your Krishna consciousness, because now you're eating 3,000 chapatis to make up for all the chapatis you didn't eat, and you can't digest 3,000 chapatis and you get sick. So let me go back and see your comments or questions. I guess the point I'm trying to make is that when you look at where you're at and what's real for you, don't run away from it, but think, okay, now how am I going to deal with this and utilize this in Krishna consciousness? It's like, and be realistic about it. If I see certain attractions are there, don't pretend that they're not there, but just realize they are there, that I like these things, I need these things, and don't pretend that I don't, and don't try to live without it, or don't try to renounce beyond what you're capable of. So Krishna Karshani says, thank you for bringing this topic up. It's a serious problem in ISKCON. I see it all the time. I'm not sure if we are able to prevent, especially that many gurus strongly preaching about full renunciation, which is for most devotees artificial. Someone can be artificially renounced for some time, but to achieve balance, some offer artificial renunciation. Some who do artificial renunciation have to go in Sanskrit. Yeah. So, like we were saying, okay, if you're a brahmachari, we'll say, okay, do this for 5 years. So then you can do that level of renunciation for 5 years, because this is just part of the ashram and I can do it. This is not the level I'm on that I can do my entire life. So that's That's the understanding of that situation. So we're preaching about pure devotional service. Okay, you can do it in that part of your life. And then we're preaching about pure devotional service, and we're saying, okay, this is where we need to end up. How are you going to get there? What do you have to do to get there? But don't convince yourself that you can get there on a road that where the cars are going 150 miles an hour and you don't know how to drive that fast. Then you're going to get in an accident. So see what is. Okay, you have to know what is pure devotional service. You have to know what is full surrender. You have to know all these things. But then you have to figure out how to get there. And as I said, sometimes renouncing something that you need to engage in Krishna service, it's not the way to get there. It's a way that will make you more attached to that. Krishna Karshani says, I think in your class you should address to gurus and leaders to preach in a more balanced way. The way they are preaching, making often their disciples guilty if they're not fully renounced. Yeah. Well, I would say part of that is also not encouraging people to take initiation before they're ready. Because if they're not initiated, they don't have to push them as much. But this is an important point, and it's difficult because we are always preaching about pure devotional service. So what I think is necessary, we continue preaching about pure devotional service, what is full surrender, but at the same time we balance it in terms of how you can apply that according to your particular situation and needs and realization and level of Krishna consciousness. So you understand the principle. Like I often say, if you hear a story about Prahlad Maharaj having full faith that he would even eat poison, it doesn't mean that you should put poison in your prasadam and to test your faith. Prabhupada said that we're not going to challenge the laws of nature. He said, but it does teach about faith, and then so you want to take that and apply it into your situation. Well, where do I lack faith, and how can I use this pastime to have more faith? Not that I'm going to drink poison. So I think that's important to understand. How do you take these ideas of very exalted devotees and the philosophy of pure devotional service, and then see how to apply it in the particular situation you are in with the challenges you have? So where's my faith lacking? So maybe by reading that story of Prahlad Maharaj, you realize I'm lacking faith in a particular area. That doesn't mean I'm imitating his faith. It just means I've come to realize I need more faith in this particular area, or I need to give up a certain attachment that I have that's unhealthy. So, I'm reading about complete renunciation of Rishabdev or Jadbharat or the 6 Goswamis. But I can't be that renounced. But I do have this attachment to something, and I realize it's not healthy. And so those stories and philosophy could help with that. So it's not that I'm going to become Rupa Goswami, but at least I did get rid of this one attachment that's getting in the way of my bhakti. So that's how we put everything in perspective of where we're at. And if we do that, then we can hear all about this pure devotional service, pure surrender, because we'll always be thinking, okay, it's a principle, and how does that principle apply to me? But if we think, no, that's the level I'm supposed to be on, that's where we get into trouble, right? And just like, because I'm married, I see the nature of my wife and daughter, which is the female nature and the need for things to be very clean, orderly, comfortable, and so forth. Whereas for myself, I'm more adjustable. It's easier for me to adapt to situations. That's more of the male mentality. So because they know they need these things, they just do what they need and then just forget about it. Well, this is what I need, and then I don't think about it. So I think that's a healthy attitude. I need this and that. I take my 10 chapatis, and I don't think about what a glutton I am. I eat 10 chapatis. I just know if I don't get 10, I'm hungry and my mind's disturbed. So I eat 10 and I don't think about it anymore, and then I do my service. So if we understand that, then I think we'll be okay. But if we're led to understand that there's something wrong with us because we need to eat 10 chapatis, that is a problem. Now, Bir Krishna Maharaj he's giving classes on nonviolent communication, and he's always instructing the devotees to be aware when they're counseling other devotees or when they're engaging with other devotees, what are the needs that other devotees have? Because a lot of times devotees are frustrated or upset because their needs aren't being fulfilled. And it looks like the problem is something else, but really underneath it is just the need. They're complaining about this and that, but really the need is they're not being heard or not being recognized or not being engaged properly or whatever. And he's saying also, but you need to be aware of your own needs, and you shouldn't feel guilty about your needs. You need to be aware of your needs, fulfill your needs, and then you'll be peaceful and balanced and grounded. So I think maybe for some of us, the concept of fulfilling our own needs sounds like, well, that's just Maya, which it could turn into, for sure. It could turn into a very selfish, self-centered way of thinking. But in a more mature aspect, it's just, no, this is what I need. I need to do a little music, I need to eat this, I need to live on this standard, I need to live in this ashram and so forth. And so once that's taken care of, then I can focus on my Krishna consciousness. Then these things are not distractions, they're support. And I think some of us might think, no, they're distractions or they're forms of Maya, because we misunderstand it. If I don't read your comment, it's like a little short comment in the relation to what I was saying that I can't really comment on now because I forgot what I was saying about it. Radhapriya said, it's an excellent point that you said, but sometimes the temple presidents and the leaders, they're not open-minded. When you have an idea, they don't care about it. Like young devotee, yeah. I used to feel frustration. Well, how to deal with that, one way to deal with that is get a bunch of young devotees and start your own temple. I'm not trying to create a revolution in your city, but if you have a bunch of young devotees together, you won't have that problem because everyone will listen to everyone. One way to deal with this, if you feel frustrated, is to express your needs. I have this need because I have these abilities and I have this professional experience. I have a need to do this or organize this, and I would like facility in the temple to do that, or like at least approval. So expressing your needs is important. And if the leader can't understand your needs, then try to understand his needs, and then maybe by you understanding his needs, he'll just come to understand your needs. Or find devotees that do understand your needs, who can work with you and support you, or do it on your own if that's what's necessary, if it's really important. If it's important service or important for you in your Krishna consciousness. Krishna Karsini says, I have a friend who is a professional Ayurvedic doctor. She is also a devotee. She said that her Ayurveda guru is saying that if the emotional needs are not met, the body will be ill. And if it sounds like a vicious cycle here. Emotional needs are not met, the body is ill. And if the body is sick, sometimes one's not able to do spiritual progress. And also your emotions will be affected. So it looks that being aware of emotional needs is very important, and we have to fulfill them to make our body and mind healthy. Yeah, so here's something really depressing. I don't know if you all agree with this, but I'm going to throw this out. What you just said, I think, is obvious to like the whole world. But somehow or other, there are things which are obvious to the whole world which are just like, yeah, of course, that's how things are. And we're discussing it in Krishna consciousness because somehow or other we've taken the philosophy, we've construed it in a way that what it becomes common sense or natural law becomes obliviated or blurred, and we're having to clear everything. But isn't this just common sense? You have emotional needs, you have physical needs, mental, spiritual needs, you have ashram needs, you have needs for service. They need to be met in a Krishna conscious way. That's just common sense to me. But the fact that we would have to talk about it means that devotees are being trained to be somewhat what's the word I'm looking? Separated from their own self. There's a word. It's not misaligned. When you're not in touch, you're not in touch with your own needs, or you feel guilty about your own needs. And that seems to be the function, not the function, but it seems to be a very common thing within religion, because religions, they're within a context where people can feel guilty and shamed for not being pure, or as pure as they are thought they are to be. So then you can start feeling bad about something which is just normal and natural. Feel bad about eating your 10 chapatis. So a lot of times when we're having discussions, and I'm discussing things because devotees have said things which I think don't make sense, that defy common sense or natural law, and I have to talk about it, and some devotees will say, oh, thank you for clearing that up. And then I look back and I say, what did I say? You could probably go on YouTube and find 100 people who just said what I said. It's just common sense, normal, isn't it? Sometimes, and that to me it's depressing to have to, give a talk to clarify the blurs, because people are saying things, quote unquote, representing Krishna consciousness that don't even jive with the way the world works. Like that one devotee said, you shouldn't, what did he say? Emotions are Maya, or, emotional needs are Maya, something like that. And then his partner said psychology is Maya. It's materialistic. We should have nothing to do with it. It's detrimental, Like, really? I don't understand, And so then I have to give a class explaining the use of these things and emotions and but these are things that I'm not the only one teaching. So many people are teaching. It's just the way the world is. Parananda says, sometimes beginning devotees take too much austerities, and then after they give up Krishna consciousness and take... Yeah, exactly. That was my whole point. Yeah, you are supposed to eat 10 chapatis, you ate 2, so now you're going to be eating 25 a day to make up for the 15 you lost, and you're going to become fat and unhealthy and tired, and yeah, so this is exactly what happens. I have a godbrother who's very renounced by nature. It's just natural. He gets up at 1:30 and this and that. Very austere, but he likes really good prasadam. He really likes good prasadam. So you see that we all have different natures. Like somebody can go without sleep, but they really need to eat, or someone needs to sleep more, but eating is not a big thing. Like for me, before I was a devotee, eating was very low on my list. Not because I was some saint; it was just some physical thing. That I was very thin. And especially when I was young, my parents would say, eat more. And I'd say, no, I don't want to eat more. I'm not hungry. Strange. So you might look at me and say, oh, Prabhu, you don't eat much. You're very renounced. No, it's just, there's other things I do where I'm not as renounced. But in eating, I'm more renounced. I don't care. What do you want? Just make me kitchery. What else? Nothing. Oh, can't we make you something else? If you want, but I don't need it. So that's me. So everybody, we all have different natures, and so we have to recognize it. So it should be natural. So this godbrother, he's very renounced in so many ways, but he really likes nice prasadam. And he's not ashamed of it. It's just what it is. And then he takes his nice prasadam, and it's over. It's finished. He doesn't lament. Oh, I'm so bad. I'm a sannyasi. I'm eating like this. What am I going to do? Maybe I should kill myself. No, it's just he's doing it in a way which it doesn't harm his Krishna consciousness. So Katie is asking how to find balance between I am old enough to renounce physical aspect of material relationship but still having the need for it, and feeling guilty because the person can't meet the highest standard of it, 50 rounds to make a baby, and a whole party around that. But like I say, if you want something to be depressed about, if you want to be something to be ashamed of, if you want to find something to feel guilty about, then you've joined the right movement, because we can just whip out so many Shastra quotes and sayings and Prabhupada says, and we could make you feel really bad. Isn't it? You agree? I mean, if you're into depression and feeling bad and guilty, well, you know, not just the Hare Krishna movement, become a Baptist. They'll do a good job on you. It's just religious movements. If you don't take them in the right way, it's not their intention to make you feel bad, but if you don't take them in the right way, then you can be made to feel really bad. So the answer to your question is do the best you can in the situation you're in and be sincere about it. I have this funny story. There's this brahmachari, and he needs to get married. He doesn't really want to get married, but he realizes that'll be the best thing. And he's got a mentor, and the mentor's helping him. And he gets married. And one of the first things he and his wife do is they go shopping. She takes him to the mall. He accompanies her, and she walks into the store, into the lingerie department. So a few weeks prior to that, he was still a single man living in the temple with the brahmacharis. And here he is married now in the lingerie department with his wife looking at lingerie while she's looking at lingerie. And he just I think he had a panic attack at that point. And so his mentor said, he said, you have to explain this to me. And his mentor said, welcome to the Grihastha ashram. It's just what it is. It's just part of it. I mean, not that every man goes, I never went lingerie shopping. My wife would be embarrassed. And I wouldn't want to do it anyway. But I'm just using that as an example. That his mentor said, this is what you're married now, so this is the playing field has changed. So whatever your situation is, you just have to deal with that situation and deal with it and just do the best you can in that situation. And Prabhupada's not on a big throne with a thunderbolt, ready to smash you. But if you can prevent doing something that's not the best, and you don't prevent it, that's a problem. But if you're in a situation and you can't prevent it, then that's a situation. Then you make the best of it. I'm not saying you do something sinful or something against Krishna consciousness, but if it can't be ideal, and you make it as ideal as you can. But if you could make it more ideal and you're not, then that's a problem. Then that should be rectified. So you rectify what you can and do the best. Some women, because women have a need for husbands and families and homes and that's a very strong need. Some women, when they couldn't marry devotees, they would marry non-devotees. And they would be happy because they had children, and that need for children was so strong. So that was the best they could do. They couldn't find a devotee their age or compatibility, so they married a non-devotee. So it wasn't ideal, but they made the best use of it. And so they have their deities, and they do their seva, and so on. And then when they engage with their husband, it's different than if the husband were a devotee, but that's the best they could do. So, but they needed that. They were going to go crazy if they weren't married. So you do the best you can. So Krishna Karshani says, the funny and sad story from Poland that took place almost 30 years ago. We as devotees who were living in the temple were so renounced that when we were coming to visit our parents, we were spending all the day watching TV. So artificial renunciation may lead to engaging in even more sense gratification. Yeah, that's what your husband was saying. Scary. Well, that was my point. That is, if our movement is going to succeed, we have to realize that we have a huge problem, which is turnover. And turnover is because we're pushing people to become something they can't. Whereas if you just allow people to adapt to Krishna consciousness on their own level, you will see 10 years from now, they'll still be around. They may not be that Krishna, quote unquote, Krishna conscious, but they're maintaining their level of Krishna consciousness because the level that they're maintaining is not difficult to maintain. It might include going to movies, it might include going to restaurants, it might include so many things. But it also includes coming to the temple, associating, hearing, chanting. And so they're able to maintain all that because they didn't try to jump off a cliff that was too high and ended up crashing. Yeah, there are a lot of classes that I give that I think it's sad that I have to give them because it's indicative of the problem. And then there was some discussion I had online about men understanding that how they deal with their wife can have this huge effect on their wife's level of Krishna consciousness, and so they shouldn't put all the burden on their wife. And people were saying, "Oh, that's not what Prabhupada said. He said, if there's divorce, it's the woman's fault." And I was saying, "Okay, it's the woman's fault, but if you understand it's a woman's fault, wouldn't you, as men, not want to put her in a situation because she's weak in that area that would cause her to want to leave you?" And people were like saying, "Oh, you're not representing what Prabhupada said." And I said, "I'm just representing common sense." And then I thought, it's so sad that we had that discussion. I mean, what I said was like, just be nice to your wife, because Prabhupada's saying women are more inclined for divorce, which means it's more difficult for them to exist in a toxic situation. So don't make the situation toxic because you'll force them out. Therefore, it'll be your fault. And everyone's saying, no, it's their fault. You're not representing Prabhupada. And I felt like, what has our movement come to? Where you say something that's common sense and someone's saying, no, it's not supported in Shastra. So Wilfred says, I'm a little more fastidious than many devotees at the temple and clean each floor 2 to 3 days a week. I've been getting frustrated with the lack of cooperation over keeping the temple clean. I've aired suggestions as to how we can maintain cleanliness if we work together, but no one seems to be getting it. I decided that since that's my need, to keep the temple clean, I have to clean more and more and accept that's the way it is. I'm trying to get rid of resentment. As I know, it's all my sense to control, yeah. Oh, it's so hard working in organizations. Easier to live in a cave by yourself, right? Well, Mr. Clean, maybe by keeping it clean, someday they're going to get used to living in a clean temple and they'll keep it clean. You never know. Or maybe they'll realize, oh, you want to hear a joke, Wilfred? This is a funny joke. This guy, he's always asking his wife has 2 or 3 kids, and his wife doesn't work, and he comes home and he says, like, what do you do all day? Like, I'm at work, for 10 hours. Like, what do you do all day? And so one day he comes home and the house is a total mess. There's no dinner. Kids are dirty. One of the kids has a knife. And he goes to find her and she's just sitting in her bed reading a book. And he's like, what is going on here? She said, well, every day you come home and say, what did you do today? Like, I don't do anything. Well, today I didn't do it. And so, maybe Wilfred, maybe for a few days you don't do it, and people say, like, why is it so dirty here? Maybe they'll appreciate it. Like, Wilfred, what do you do all day? Well, the last 2 weeks I didn't do it. You see how dirty the temple is? Yeah, so... Kartasnya. How do you pronounce it? Kartashna Saraswati. Thank you to bring this topic. So many problems in ISKCON connected with it. I'm so happy to ask you to be my guru. Hare Krishna. Thank you for being happy. Talia says she loves sleep. But, loving sleep can also mean you're not inspired. Because if you're inspired, like if there's a service that really inspires you, that you look forward to, that you really want to do, and you're happy in Krishna consciousness, you'll sleep less. So if you sleep too much, and physically you don't need that much, then you want to go to your mind. It's like, okay, is it a mental problem that's making me tired? The guilt to not be a pure devotee. Who's this from? Kishore Mani. The guilt to not be a pure devotee and the judgment from others is the most common reason why devotees give up the process in my country. Yeah. It's sad, isn't it? How to deal with the criticism when... The criticism when you proposed to open a new temple or preaching center because many young devotees cannot change or work with the criticism. Well, you ask me how I deal with it, or you want to know how you should deal with it. One of the things you can do is get the support of a GBC, and because the whole way ISKCON works is if you work under a GBC, then you're good and you can do it. And so, let's say you want to start a temple in wherever, right? But there's already a temple in that city or near that city. But if you get the GBC of that area involved, or you're working with another GBC, let's say you're working on innovative preaching with this GBC, and that innovative preaching could be anywhere, then that GBC can talk to the local people and say, we want to start doing innovative preaching, we want to have young devotees doing this, and maybe women. So, anyway, you're not that young a devotee, but a devotee all your life, so, right? So, you're older than a lot of temple presidents in terms of how long you've been a devotee. I could offer you this opinion that I think if you do that, it's going to be appreciated. I think maybe there's some reluctance for some reason or whatever. But I think it'll be appreciated by so many people if young people are going out starting temples and so forth. Everybody wants to see that. That's what we did. Did that answer your question, or I need... But as far as criticism, I would say, as a general answer, not specific to your situation, if you're convinced something is important, you've discussed this with other devotees, your vision is very clear, you understand this is what Prabhupada would want in this situation, then at that point criticism won't bother you. You'll just take criticism as, well, people don't understand. And I'll need to demonstrate it. And I want to do this project because this project will demonstrate what I think is important to be done, and the people will see that and the criticism will stop. One other point is, you could find this somewhere online, but many of the greatest inventors were considered crazy, and people said you can't do that. So sometimes it's a compliment. Criticism can be a compliment. Of course, sometimes they may be criticizing because maybe you're doing something that's not right or not aligned with Prabhupada. That's another thing. Mr. Clean is going to take a break and not clean the temple. He's going to create a disaster in the Bhakti Center. Then what's going to happen? If you do that, you have to tell Bhadra it's an experiment. Actually, instead of cleaning it, you can just put dirt everywhere and see if anybody notices. What are the steps for natural renunciation? Make it work in a couple. What if natural renunciation, grow old, then you'll become renounced by growing old. What if someone won't be able to renounce from something? Then they won't be able to. Don't worry about it. Will the person have to come back in the next life? Not necessarily. Prabhupada's mercy is so strong that if you're a sincere devotee and you dedicate your life to serving him, even if you're a little attached to something, he'll knock it out. That we have faith. He'll take care of us. So, Ajita says, yes, Kishore Mani, you can write. I think this is a different Kishore Mani than I was thinking, right? Your country. What's your country, Kishore Mani? Russia? There's so many. This is the problem. There's so many people with the same name who I think have the same guru. So, yeah. One thing I sadly observe is that some devotees like to guilt trip others. If one cannot go to the temple to do certain seva or attend some activities, or if someone can't reach a certain standard, they guilt trip you and make you feel bad. This is very discouraging. Yeah, that's a good way to keep devotees away from the temple. Sometimes when you're trying to encourage someone, you discourage them. Yeah. Yeah, but see, a lot of what I'm addressing here is I realize it's a problem, but a lot of you are the next generation, so you're the ones who are going to be leaders, so at least if you understand the problem, you can change. It's like they say dysfunctional parents create dysfunctional kids who become dysfunctional parents who create dysfunctional kids, and some generation has to change the culture. So, you could change the culture. But I personally have very strong feelings about this, that I don't think our movement has a bright future unless we allow people to come to Krishna consciousness and practice it where they're at, without this kind of pressure. I don't think there should be, even the idea of getting initiated, it's just there, this is the principle, and then you deal with it according to where you're at. So Wilfred is going to the Bhakti Center today with bags of papers and dirt and all kinds of stuff, and he's just going to throw it everywhere. And then he's just going to sit down and chant his rounds and watch people walk over the dirt and see what happens. And then 3 days later, he's going to have a little list to go. So he's going to say, do you know that I didn't clean for 3 days and I threw dirt everywhere and nobody picked up anything? Let's talk about it. Right? Or maybe they will pick up everything. Throw the dirt everywhere and leave a broom and a dustpan and see if anybody sweeps it. Why not? We need to do these social experiments. And take a video of it, Wilfred, and post it on YouTube. The status of ISKCON in Christmas 2015. And you show you putting the dirt everywhere and then putting the broom there, and you just sit there, and then everybody's walking up and down the stairs in and out of the temple room. They're looking at the dirt, they're looking at the piles, they're walking around the piles, jumping over the piles. They're looking at it, should I pick it up? And then you put a dustbin there. Okay, from Chile. Living Mayapur, yeah, okay, yeah. Woodstock, yeah. Yes. There's another Kishori Mani in Mayapur also, so I got mixed up, yeah. And then we'll have the social experiment, you'll have on the camera, they'll speed up 1 hour, 2 hours, finally after 18 hours, one guest comes and sees it and they sweep it up. And then you post it and you put it on the leadership website for all the leaders in ISKCON. That would be super interesting, right? Okay, it's time for me to go. I've got to go pick up a rental car to drive to Orlando this afternoon and do the final stages of packing. So we'll see you in Mayapur if you're there. Oh, what about the elephant bathing? I mean, we do sadhana and then watch TV or something that we're attached to, which puts down our consciousness. What about that? That is called stupidity. That's another definition for stupidity. Okay, so if you're going to watch TV, at least watch something that's going to help you. So you have a tendency to watch TV and be entertained. Okay, so watch something that will help you about something that you could. It doesn't even have to be directly in Krishna consciousness. It could be something about learning about a mentality or a skill that would help you in Krishna consciousness. Or you want to get married. There are lots of good videos on marriage, and some of them are hilariously funny. Watch that. You're going to get married. You want to, you like to watch things. Okay, watch that. That's relevant if you're going to be married, or even you are married, or you want to be a speaker. So Google the 10 best speeches ever given. Study them. You know what I mean? It's just don't just zone out and watch some stupid Bollywood movie where 450 people get their heads kicked in by some big muscle guy, and then he finally gets the girl and they dance around some stupid dance, and it's why watch that? What is that going to do for you? It's going to it's going to make you even. It's stupid to watch it, and watching the movie will make you more stupid. So to be Krishna conscious, I always like to say you can't be stupid. Prabhupada will make you smart, and so, maybe you want to watch Krishna Leela, or watch the Leelas of different devotees. There's so many, movies about saints that were made in India, like in the 50s and 60s, these old black and white movies, or the 20s, there's so much, I was, learning about something learning about situations in the world that maybe you want to preach in a certain context and learn about those people. What are they thinking? What's going on? Or you're going to preach in a certain city or a certain country, a certain age group. Go online, entertain yourself, but learn about this group of people. What are college students like now in India, in this city? And that's where you're preaching. What are they thinking? When you read all these you watch all these interesting shows on the topic. Okay, so at least your desire to watch TV can be utilized in a way that advances your service. And then you won't feel drained. You'll think, oh, this is really good. I'm glad I watched this show. Now I know how people are thinking. Does that make sense? So Wilfred's going to post his video. He's going to put dirt everywhere. He's going to get a wastebasket, a broom, and he's going to have a camera there. And the camera's just going to stay there. And Wilfred's just going to chant, and people are going to look at him and going to clean this. He goes, no, today I'm just chanting. Today's my chanting day. I'm not cleaning today. Said, well, what about this mess? And then Wilfred will say, yeah, somebody can clean it. Whoever wants to can clean it. And, create this incredible video. Maybe within the first 15 minutes it'll get cleaned. Maybe in 3 days it won't get cleaned. It would be interesting. I think of all these social experiments we could do at ISKCON. I think that would be interesting, to just show, I had this other social experiment. It's actually happened in Mayapur. There was this woman, she looked like maybe 25, and she was on the side of the road that connects the different sides of the temple. There's a big road, a lot of cars go, and there's a parking lot. And she was just like down with her head in her hands, and she looked really miserable. And all these people are driving by, and I'm wondering, did her husband just kick her out of the house, or did her mother just die, or what's going on? And everybody's just going by, and nobody's saying anything. That's interesting, isn't it? For uplifting the culture of the temple, we can do social experiments. They did this one experiment where there's a new pastor for the church. Have you seen this experiment? And people were going to meet the new pastor. And so there's this guy, disheveled guy, really dirty, hungry, and he was outside the church, and he was asking people if they could give something, some donation or some food. And he's really, smelly, dirty, right? Then they introduced, and nobody gave anything. Then they introduced the new pastor, and that was that guy. He gets up on stage and said that I was just doing an experiment. And only out of, 800 in the congregation, only one person gave me any money. He said, that's my sermon. I want you to look at that and think about that, and I'll see you next week. Cool, huh? At least that's what it said that he did. So. Okay, so I'm going to leave now. Thank you all for watching. And we'll see you in Mayapur soon. And you're all invited to come. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol.